Nihon no minasan, good morning and much love. My name is Ryan Gubler, and this is the Sekkai News, World News broadcast that I'm going to do. I'm going to mix up the English and the Japanese and try to include in the conversation other people that want to join me and discuss just kind of world news. If your Japanese is stronger than your English, then dozo nihongo de onegaishimasu. And on my end, I can kind of go back and forth. Dochi demo no eigo ka nihongo demo hanashite mimasu ne. Okay, first off, coming up here in the Sekkai News, we have President Trump visiting Japan and feeding the goldfish with the Japanese Prime Minister. And the first thing we see in the news is CNN takes the video and edits out Trump feeding the koi fish like the Prime Minister. And this is the problem. This is one reason, we need to start these global kind of more universal discussions, more one-on-one news where we're putting aside these broadcast companies that have political reference points, that political leanings that are just much too heavy. This is just a shame that CNN would try to deceive the people into thinking that Trump is such a bad person that he doesn't follow customs in Japan and just dumped out the fish is basically what they're dumped out the fish food. And the coverage is he's giving us bad will in Japan. So, what are your thoughts on this? 皆さんはどう思いますか? Donald Trump 日本に行ってJapanese の Prime Minister と話したりいろいろな経験をしたりしましたが、日本のニュースでどういう皆さんが見ることがありましたか? Was the coverage good? Was the coverage bad? Was the visit a good thing? Were there any what we're seeing that's common here in the U.S. is there's a lot of backlash when Trump visits, and I think if that was there in Japan. And I don't think it was because I didn't see it in the news, but I think it would have made the news and they would have made a big deal out of it because most of the media, a lot of the left-leaning media in Japan is trying to make it look like, wherever Trump goes, he incites violence and riots. And of course, that's not the person who's doing that, but that's just the people and how they're taking it. So, Yes, ぜひ誰か私に教えてください. How was the reaction in Japan to Trump's visit, and how do people feel? This is just for starters. We're looking at him. Something as simple as feeding fish, and the news media feels as though they have to lie to us that he just dumped out his food, is what CNN claimed, and we all know from seeing the full video that he did basically what the Japanese Prime Minister did, and he fed the fish bite by bite and just flipped out some spoonfuls one at a time, and then at the end the Japanese Prime Minister dumped his food, and so Donald Trump followed suit and did the same thing, which is a great custom, good thing for them to do together, I think. All right, moving forward. Next up in global headlines, Catalonia's independence bid shows signs of strain as coalition splits. これは日本人の皆さんはどう思いますか? How do you think this is going to play out? Do you think that Catalonia will be allowed to separate and become an independent state? どうですか? カタロニアが自分のところ国がになる可能性がありますと思いますか? And if so, is it okay? Is this something that is fair to the rest of Spain, where a lot of the wealth and money in Spain lives in Catalonia, and these people rely on that area for financial support and somewhat. And in the U.S., we talk a lot about, sharing the wealth and health care for everybody and kind of the trickle-down economics, but is one way to talk about it, and then the other way is, government rule and socialism, where it's forced down, where money is forced to be shared amongst the people, and healthcare for everybody. And what's fair? What's the discussion like in Japan? 日本でこういう話がありますか？こういう健康のヘルスケアのこととか、どうやってお金を皆さんと分けていったらいいと、そういう話がありますか？ And that's a big divider in the U.S. right now, and there's even talk of certain states will always threaten, right? We're going to succeed from the country. They're going to separate from the rest of the country, and California is going to become its own nation, or Texas is going to become its own nation because of all these other problems. And America, it really is kind of a conglomerate. It's the United States, right? It's kind of a united country coalition, just like the European Union in a sense. They almost mirror each other in that way. Are they better together? Are they better separate? We saw this with Brexit, where the UK decided to separate from the rest of Europe, and that's how the vote went. And we're seeing similar attitudes and mentalities in the U.S. as well. What's the coverage like of this in the news in Japan? What are you seeing? What's interesting is in America, you're seeing a lot of small news sources pop up. A lot of smaller media is really gaining traction because the large media, CNN and NBC and MSN, they're really left-leaning media, kind of a socialist media. And so we're seeing some of these. There are some big right-leaning media news sources out there like Fox News, but we're starting to see smaller news sources, just individual content providers online pop up. Daily Wire, The Blaze, some of these more right-leaning news sources are really gaining traction because people just don't know who to trust anymore. In the media, you just really can't trust anybody. It's a really bad situation. So, 日本のニュースはこういう問題がありますか？ニュースとかそういうのが信頼できませんかとか、それか日本のニュースを信頼できますか？それがニュースがいいですか？ You tell me. How is the news in Japan? Is it something you can trust? Is it something that you can look at and trust you'll get an unbiased opinion for the most part? There's always a little bit of bias. And or do you just not see it? When you watch news, you do take it for face value, and you're not seeing some of the left-leaning politics or right-leaning politics that play out here in the U.S. It's becoming so obvious that people just don't trust the news anymore. In fact, there's all this talk about how you can't trust President Donald Trump because he says so many outrageous things, but anymore, he's more trustworthy than the news. And he's the first one that says it's fake news, In America, he says it all the time. He says it's nisemono no news, and he's right on that count. So, how is it in Japan? What are you guys' thoughts? Please comment in the comments down below. Let me know. Also, if you want to get on with me and discuss these things, that's where we want to go with this news. Is have one-on-one content with people from around the world. We'll do country by country and just open these discussions up. All right. Thanks. Nissan, Subaru, cop to decades of flawed vehicle inspections. Cop to, own up. They confess that they've been using flawed inspections for decades. This is obviously a concerning issue for Japan because I think car sales is a major portion of their GDP, the economy in Japan, jobs for Japan, and now we find out that the business end isn't doing proper inspections, cutting corners, For what reason, I don't know. But, could this impact the economy? Obviously, it's impacted the stock market for Nissan. They're down over 4%. Subaru, I don't think they've reported yet, but I'm sure they're going to go down too. Is this hitting the news in Japan? Yes, it is. Is it hitting the news in the U.S.? Not really. You'd have to hunt for it a little bit to see that this is happening. I mean, it's made the news, but it's not front page news. And I think the average American, they're brushing this off because the quality's still been pretty good, even with the flawed quality review, the flawed inspections coming out of Japan. So, but we're seeing this in more places than just Japan. We're seeing it in Europe too, with Audi and BMW and Volvo creating coalitions to create a monopoly on pricing and set pricing, which free markets shouldn't do that. They should have separate pricing, and that usually drives the cost down. When we have these monopolies and push the price up and unfair markets, then makes for fake inflation and fake pricing, and it's just really bad for the economy overall. That's playing out in Europe. Still not a huge issue here in the U.S. either. Maybe because there's no verdict on whether that really happened or not yet. More than likely it did. I'm thinking, there'll be some fines coming out of that. What are the thoughts here in Japan? Do you think that this could potentially impact car sales around the world? What about sales in Japan alone? Are people going to wait longer until inspections improve before they buy their next car in Japan? And, let me know in the comments down below, or let me know if you want to participate in a conversation to discuss exactly what is going on in Japan. Okay, just off the heels of a mass shooting in Las Vegas where over 50 people were shot and killed, many more dozens of people were just shot and injured. A horrible tragedy. We have another mass shooting out of Texas at a church, of all places, where people are there for peace and worship and reverence, and then a gunman comes in looking for a mother-in-law who I don't believe was there, and starts shooting babies at point-blank range and killing people. And so, why is it that the U.S. is seeing so many mass shootings in recent history? In this case, for him and for the Las Vegas shooter too, they're blaming his mental health, his seishin tekina kenko ga yokunai, and they're saying that that's the cause of the issue. In the case of this guy, they're saying that current laws would have stopped him from purchasing guns had the laws been followed correctly. And this is the big debate in the U.S. is why are we allowing so many gun sales, right? And why are people allowed to have such violent and powerful guns? And in the case of the Las Vegas shooter, current laws wouldn't have stopped him. He didn't have any history, and his mental health was only a recent issue that was unknown to even some of his closest family, from what it sounds like, although it didn't sound like he was very close to anybody. But this is the debate going on here in the U.S. is, there's a Second Amendment, that you're the right to bear arms, and the whole purpose of that amendment is it's the right to protect yourself from a tyrannical government. And to do that, you need weapons that the government has, and you can't protect yourself with a smaller gun than the government has. And so the debate is, do we start outlawing stronger guns or just guns overall? And which is kind of what, the left is pushing for at the end. The right, of course, wants full access to any guns that are available because they want to be able to defend themselves from government. Obviously, the biggest mass murderer of all are governments, right? If we look back over time, when hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have been killed, it's because of governments, not because of one individual mass shooter who just kills, 20 people at a time, which is still a horrible tragedy, horrible thing to happen, but it takes a lot of mass shootings to happen before you add up to the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that governments have killed. So, does this debate exist in Japan? What do you think? I know that guns are not allowed in Japan, but I think that in part is because of the end of World War II. And should that change at this point in Japan? Should guns be allowed? Should people be allowed to own them to protect themselves? Obviously, you have North Korea, and other countries around Japan that you don't know the mentality of these countries and or of the politics or religion or just the mindset of the people that could change and make them want to come into Japan and cause damage. So is that one way Japanese people would want to start protecting themselves and take ownership of their own security and not rely on government forces from their country and the U.S.? Please share. All right, thanks for taking the time. If you made it this far, obviously I need to work on my transitions from topic to topic and screen to screen on these broadcasts. But, this is just something I think it'd be fun to do. And anybody that wants to join me, please comment down below. Get in touch with me if you want to actually be a part of the conversation. We can discuss anything from sports, technology, global news, whatever's hot on the list that we can have a good debate on, keep an open discussion. That's what we're not seeing in the big news media outlets these days. They just completely lean to one side. No matter what, a straight-faced will lie to the entire country in the U.S. And so, I'm just trying to open up the discussion. We can talk about technology. That's why I have the screen open. Obviously, the iPhone X was just released. Big deal in the U.S., people lining up to get that. Is that still a big deal in Japan? I'm kind of surprised that people are still lining up. Amazon Cloud has a new camera coming out, good price, does everything you want it to do. If you decide you want more than 24 hours of storage, you can, $6 a month or something like that, and you can have 7 days of backup. And if you need more than that, it's just a little bit more. So good pricing on that, and some exciting technology always coming out. All right, much love. Everybody have a good day.